When you're doing a long run, it's mental therapy. I must admit, there will be those instances where I have this internal tug of war, where your body is telling you pain, stop, and your mind is telling you keep going, keep going.
So can you explain to me the finish line mentality and the role it plays in your literally day-to-day life? Norman Aquilina, he is a group chief executive of Simonds Farsons Cisk PLC.
Any manager has to always find ways of getting the best qualities out of each individual. Showing trust, empowering the people around you, make sure that there is the collective strength. You can't just look at your bottom lines, you need to look at the horizon. I don't believe that change has to happen, but what I definitely believe has to happen is
Hi, and welcome back to Setting the Pace. Today is a really special episode. Firstly, because it's the 10th episode and it's been a year working on Setting the Pace. And honestly, if a year ago you'd have told me that I would be filming my 10th episode, I probably would have laughed in your face. But also, statistically, most podcasts don't make it to the 10th episode. So I'm really happy that I'm still excited to be doing this and lucky that people are still trusting me to come on the podcast and share their stories. So it's really funny. So this was a bit of a competitive thing I had with myself, like get to the 10th episode. Like I needed to do it for myself, to prove to myself, the podcast and everything. And it really coincides with the guests I have today because probably the number one adjective that he would use to describe a lot of things in his life is competition and also believing and then you will achieve. So it's really kind of the stars aligned and I really believe in this stuff. So I'm super excited. Today we have a very, very special guest who has been at the helm of one of Malta's most iconic companies for 2 decades. He is a group chief executive of Simonds Farsons Cisk PLC. And you've probably guessed, it's Norman Aquilina. Norman has led the company through many challenges, transformations, with the hundreds of people that work for him and work just as hard. He joined Simonds Farsons Cisk PLC in 2004, so you can imagine how different the world looked. Since then, he's navigated major socio-economic shifts, including Malta's EU accession and game-changing market through liberalization of the beverage sector. So, as you can tell, it's going to be a really exciting conversation. But to top it all off, Norman is a really avid sport enthusiast. He doesn't like to refer to himself as an athlete, but every time I've seen him, he's either running or doing some ultramarathon, and that is how I see him. So I would pretty much say that he is an athlete. This podcast, we're going to be discussing the CEO athlete mindset and what business leaders can learn from endurance sports. Inside the daily routine of somebody that has to perform at a high speed at work, but also within their personal life, how Norman went from running 10Ks to Ironman, and how finding sports later on in life has literally set the tone for the life he lives now. The secret to building a winning team, how facing challenges head-on creates success, and the longevity code, so how you keep winning for 15 years plus, and keep the intensity both in your life and also in sports. So super excited. Let's jump right in and let's go.
Hi, I'm Maria and welcome to Setting the Pace. This podcast was born out of the curiosity to understand the mindset behind the outcomes we spend years chasing, be it in sports, business, relationships, and everything in between. I want to learn more about the person you become in achieving anything that's worth your time and how you can set the pace to get exactly there.
Hi, Norman. Welcome to Setting the Pace. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you very much for this invite. I must say this is my first experience, but I'm looking forward.
So a lot of people I've had on, it's been their first time, and after they always say like, that was actually quite okay. So I think we're going to be good.
That's good.
So if I were to meet you in the street and you had to describe yourself today, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I would say I'm a person of not too many words, but very set in my ways. I'm very determined. So that's how I would describe myself, as a relatively reserved person, but very set and very determined.
Nice. And so also another way that you would describe yourself is being the CEO of a very big company, but you've also got this sports edge, right? just to kick right off, how would you say there are those similarities between running a company but also keeping sports on the same level?
Well, yes. I mean, if you look at both of them, they both have a lot of common aspects. And certainly it's about setting goals, setting objectives. So whether it's in a business environment or in a sport or in a competition, it's all about setting your objectives and working towards that objective. And I think, in a way, they complement each other, although they're very distinct, but at the same time, they're very complementing.
And so that's obviously who you are now, but you haven't always been a CEO, obviously, and you haven't always been a guy that likes to book a race where you run over 50 kilometers. So if you take us back to a time when you weren't like that and how you transitioned to that now.
Well, it was a bit of a gradual approach. I mean, as you said, I'm very much a person that believes a lot in competition. Competition in a broader sense. You can either be afraid and live in denial and just avoid it, or you can embrace it. And I'm a person that likes to embrace it.
And you've always had that, like, let's go for it, or was it?
Well, it was something that was there, but by time it becomes a bit stronger. But at the end of the day, yes, whether you're working up your career or working through some particular objective, I think it's all a matter of a gradual process. But one thing for sure that a word that I like to use a lot is belief. You have to be a strong believer. So whatever you do, as long as you have a clear objective and you believe in it, I think you'll get there.
Yeah. And so you weren't always this ultra runner. So can you take us back to a time when that shift happened, where you were like, okay, this is how I want to start my day every day for as long as I can?
Everything's relative, because when I started running and thinking of running a 10K sounded like something, out of this world. But you'll be amazed that by time you can really build and start doing things that even yourself sometimes you wonder whether you have that capability. But yes, over these years, I've gradually built it. Started from modest runs, casual weekend runs, to something a bit more. And once you start getting that sense of fulfillment, that sense of achievement, which happens in anything in life, but I really believe that it has been a strong driver to help me going from one step to the other. And as you said, I mean, I don't necessarily see myself as some athlete, but definitely as a person who really is keen to be able to set a clear objective, and by hook or by crook, I make sure I get to the finishing line.
Yeah. And why running? Like, out of all of the sports, right? Because I know you've probably swam a bit, you've cycled.
Yes.
Were you always a runner? Or?
Well, no. I mean, in my younger years, I was more into team sports, so whether it was football, basketball, water polo. I played a bit of all those. But over these years, I've started running, and although running may seem like a bit of a solo affair, it's a bit of, the way I find it, it's a bit of a relationship between body and mind.
Okay.
And I find that it works so well, in the sense that people many a times, when they see you regularly running or training, think that it's all about the physical side, but in reality it's very much a bit of both, and I find that it really complements, so I take that approach.
Okay, so we're talking about how you were into team sports, and then obviously you went into running, which is more of a solo sport, and you said that it is this affair between body and mind, which also draws parallel to life as a CEO, right, where it is a bit of a solo sport, especially when you have to make certain decisions, lead teams. And so when you're out on those long runs, are you thinking that connection between body and mind, and then also into like the boardroom and whatever, are they overlapping? Or when you're running, you're just trying to focus on what you're doing, and then how can you make that switch?
Well, there's a bit of both. For me, when it's you doing a long run, it's as much as it's physical, it's mental therapy. I must admit there will be those instances where I have this internal tug of war, where your body is telling you pain, stop, and your mind is telling you keep going, keep going. So there's that internal struggle. But I draw a lot of parallels with even whether you're within a boardroom or you're within a meeting amongst your management. As much as you as the CEO need to take certain decisions, at the same time there's also a team around you and you need to work collectively. So
Yes.
there are instances where you need to take decisions on your own, but there are times where you need to work collectively. The issue of running is somewhat different, but it's certainly, in my mind, I find it as a great time for reflection. People might tell you, well, it sounds a bit odd that in the middle of a run or whatever, but I really find it so relaxing, so motivating, and more often than not, the best time for me to reflect is after a good long run. I find myself, I'm so relaxed and so much better attuned to be able to reflect and think better than I would normally do in the normal circumstances.
Yeah. And just a question just came to my mind. Do you run with headphones or no?
Not really.
No.
I don't, for the simple reason that one, I generally run with a partner. So I mean,
You can talk.
We tend to talk and all this. But if I am running alone, yes, I tend to take headphones.
Okay. And what's the longest you've ever ran?
Longest distance, well, I wouldn't say I've gone over 60K.
Jesus Christ.
60K. I wouldn't say.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, locally, I think one of the hardest runs is probably the round Gozo, which is 53, 54.
Because of the hills.
It's a hilly affair. It happened to, the last time I did it was a very wet day, so it was a tricky one, a slippery one. But otherwise, yes.
Yes. Okay. This really brings us back to the finish line mentality, which is really something that you ingrain so much into your everyday life and also your work life. But to be honest, when we sat down before this podcast to talk, I had never really thought of it, and I've been in sports a long time. So can you explain to me the finish line mentality and the role it plays in your literally day-to-day life?
Okay, so finish line for me is critical. So the mindset always has to be get the job done. Now, the difference between work and a race, in a race, you have a clearly defined banner at the end of the run which says finish, so you know when you passed your finishing line. In work, it's a bit different. Sometimes it's, believe it or not, a bit subjective exactly where is the finishing line. Some people may not have yet defined their finishing goal. But I definitely believe that at the end of the day, having that finishing line mentality means you have an objective, you have a target, it's clear in your mind, and you need to achieve it. So it's a matter of delivering what you set out to achieve in the first place.
Yeah. And so, obviously, like you said, in sports, it's a bit more defined, right? So I'm going to go swim 3 kilometers. I know where it starts, where it ends. Same as running, cycling, if you're doing a CrossFit competition, whatever. But in business, it's not like that, because you achieve one goal and then the next month it's up again, and then people, situations, it's a constant ebb and flow. So how do you instill that finish line mentality with your teams that are under a lot of pressure? They also are competitive in their own nature. How do you instill that?
Any manager has to always find ways of getting the best qualities out of each individual. That's the point of departure. Then in terms of how you get the best out of all your team, it's a matter of showing trust, empowering the people around you, at the same time making clear that everyone's accountable for what they do. But I think at the end of the day, what's important is you have a team mentality, especially if you're in a big organization where the numbers can run into significant number of people. There might be this impression that, you know, do I make a difference? Am I one of many? But the role of any manager is to make sure that there is the collective strength. Ultimately, I like to refer to this as the 1 + 1 = 3 or even 4. That's the mindset you have to have. It's not just having 2 or 3 minds put together, but collectively to be able to come out something much stronger than if you had to do it individually. So I think that's it. So more than just a finishing line sort of mentality, it's also a bit of a winning mentality, you know. We're in this together, let's do it together, and let's achieve what we set out to achieve together.
And that's easy, I guess, to do when things are going well. Harder to do when things are not in your favor, which brings me back to around 2008, 2009, which was what you call the annus horribilis in your career. So could you explain to us a bit about that?
Okay, so 2008 was the year. I mean, let's go back. 2004 was when Malta joined the European Union.
Nobody had a phone like they do today.
And coincidentally, I joined the Farsons Group at that time because it was at a time where we recognized that competition, the market was going to change. So we anticipated all this by repositioning the business to make sure that we can face the competition. And 2008 was the year because following EU accession, there were 4 years of transition till the market was fully liberalized.
Okay.
That meant that in 2008, the market was going to be flooded in terms of new competitors, more competition coming from all over. And from a performance point of view, from a company performance point of view, we obviously felt the impact. And therefore, this is why sometimes we refer to it as annus horribilis. But at the same time, as they say, every cloud has a silver lining. It was also a year where it made us sit back, look deeper into where we stand today and how to deal with the situation. And I find that that year actually served positively in the sense that it made us realize, and although we had the benefit of having already taken significant investments, undertaken significant investments in the previous years, it put us in a position to be able to go from strength to strength. In fact, post 2008, our results kept on improving consistently. So it was a reflection, and I do believe that we make a good case study of when a company embraces competition rather than just ignores it. So you know that you can't just look at your bottom line, you always need to look at the horizon. And when you look at the horizon, you need to start to anticipate, prepare yourself, and I think that has served us well. So I think that's the approach to take. I would also maybe add, you know, I had mentioned to you last time what's also important, irrespective of whatever wake of life you come from, is this idea of you need to choose your battles. And this is something we refer to it many a time even within work. We need to choose our battles. We can't be fighting everything, so you need to choose your battles. But I like to add on that beyond choosing your battles, you also need to choose your battlefield, and you also need to choose the time of your battle. Because sometimes if you just try and tackle everything, you end up all over the place. But if you tackle the right thing at the right time and in the right place, then you're almost certain you're going to come out winning. So that's the approach. So you need to take what I would call a bit of a strategic approach. You really need to be a bit more tactful.
Yeah, that's so amazing, because obviously it's good to look back now and see how much the company has grown. But obviously when you were in the trenches and you were trying to figure everything out, you know, in 2009 and onwards, it wasn't every day waking up and, okay, let's go. But you kept reminding the team of the goal. Everyone worked together. Like you said, you know, we walk a mile together. Look what we can achieve as a whole. And I'm just taking you back a bit when you said kind of choosing the right time, choosing the battlefield. Is that, how do you go about making those decisions? Is it just kind of taking a step back, looking at the data, seeing what everybody is saying, or is it something that you would take some time alone to figure out and then tell the rest of the team? Mentally, I'd like to understand mentally how you kind of go through that process.
Well, I think in one simple word, it is prioritization. You need to prioritize. You can't do everything, so you need to prioritize. once you have prioritized, then it's a matter of seeing how you want to get there. And I do believe that once you have your priorities right, then you should be able to, of course, at the end of the day, you have a team which you need to believe in. You need to give them the space to be able to do their part. I wouldn't say I am a person that needs to, be constantly in command, as long as I'm surrounded by people who I have confidence in and who are capable of delivering, what we're setting out to achieve. Then I feel that we can work well together.
And so you keep on mentioning people, which is obviously an integral part of your success as the CEO of the company, but also just throughout your career, right? We're only as strong as the people who are around. So would you say kind of running a company is kind of like running a race? You've got the race plan, you remind yourself every single day what you need to do to get there, and then along the way, keep up that momentum. So how do you keep that momentum when you've got hundreds of people kind of looking to you for that advice, but also to reprioritize, okay, this is what we're going to do. Guys, we need to get back on track, because I'm sure a lot of people listening, they are business-minded, maybe they are also part of a sales team, or they run a company, or whatever it is. So what would be your kind of 2 cents about that?
I would say for a plan to have a best chance of working, you need to give a sense of ownership.
Okay.
That, for me, is critical. So I'll give you a very basic example. So when we are preparing our financial projections for the new financial year, this is not necessarily an exercise just done by the finance team. So normally you rope in all your managers, you have a good long discussion, we plot out our objectives, our challenges for the new year, and it's amazing. The minute you feel that people are part of the plan and they take ownership of the plan,
they want to see it forward.
Then they really buy into it and they really deliver. So that for me is critical. Otherwise, if you just set a plan and pass it on to people, it's not the same thing. So that sense of ownership is critical to be able to have everyone engaged.
And so that's what you think is really helping people walk that extra mile?
Yes, because they really feel part of it. If there is an objective set by a manager or by the CEO, and it is just seen as something that the CEO would like to have done, is one thing. But the minute it is something that we all collectively own and feel, listen guys, we're in this together, we really need to make it work, then I found that invariably the chances of success are much, much greater.
And it's also, I guess, a big part of your role is managing expectations, and that's kind of high amount of stress, I would say. I don't know if you would agree. So how do you manage that stress? It's a stock-listed company, you have shareholders, you have teams, you have people reaching out to you at the beginning, because maybe now you've got a better handle of it, but at the beginning, what was that like?
No, managing expectations is always a tricky issue because you have different audiences. So whether you're talking about the workforce, you're talking of the shareholders, you're talking of your customers, your suppliers, there are different expectations. But I've always believed that you need to primarily focus on your workforce.
Okay.
Because if you have a driven and motivated workforce, they will deliver the results. If they deliver the results, your shareholders are happy, your consumer is happy. So you need to start with your core, and the core is the foundation is your staff. And by doing that, I found that, broadly speaking, we would have achieved the objectives, satisfied the expectations. But as I said, they can vary from time to time, depending the challenges you have ahead of you. But managing expectations is something that we live on a day-to-day basis. And as much as you had earlier on made reference to even competition, I think that for me, and I keep on harping on this point, that for me, competition, as much as it may have connotations of pressure, negativism, I think at the end of the day, it is motivating, it drives you to go forward, it drives you to go that extra mile, because at the end of the day, competition is about doing something better than the rest. If you want to be successful in a competitive environment, you always need to be a step ahead. And by doing that, you need to use all the resources. That's why I made reference to prioritization, taking ownership, and with that mindset, I think, then you have a winning team.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask, when it comes to competition, right? So you keep on mentioning competition. And that's why at the beginning of the episode, I promised everyone listening, it's going to be the number one adjective, because no matter what business you're in, what career, whether it will always come in. So how do you balance, okay, so the competition is doing this. They're doing strategy A, we're doing strategy B. There comes a point where do you change for the sake of change? So, okay, let's switch it up because competition A is doing this, or do you hold steady and we keep on with the plan? So what do you think about changing just for the sake of change, or changing with a more kind of strategic approach? How do you view that?
Okay, I mean, one can discuss a lot of aspects with respect to change. And yes, there is this mentality that sometimes people want to change just for the sake of change. I don't believe that change has to happen, but what I definitely believe has to happen is a challenging mindset.
Okay.
We need to constantly challenge ourselves. Now, even if you challenge yourself and after doing so, you feel there's a need for a change or no need for change, that's fine. But as long as there's a challenging mindset, I think that's what's critical. In terms of competition, when you benchmark yourselves with your competitors, see how can you do better, whether you are, on top of things, it's obviously very strategic, and I believe that it's more about tact rather than noise. You might find situations which at face value look one way, but you need to be a bit strategic. And therefore, yes, you need to differentiate. You can't be just one of the many. I firmly believe I'd rather be a leader in a particular area than just a player in many others. So it's all about focus, specialization, and obviously taking a leading role in that area. So as we would say, you can't necessarily be jack of all trades. So for me, when it's dealing with competition, you of course need to understand who your competitors are, what they're doing, but at the end of the day, what's critical is the approach you take, how you deal with the market, and always making sure that you're managing to ride and stay a step ahead of your competitors.
So you just mentioned kind of having a more tactful approach and just being busy for the sake of being busy when it comes to your teams and just changing approach. So when you are kind of meeting, let's say, your sales team, right? And you are saying, okay, guys, we're looking at month over month, things are going well, but we need to continue to challenge ourselves. Has it gotten to a point now where the people around you and your top managers and so forth, they're so used to that you're going to put them in that position that they now come to the meeting already with that challenging, okay, this is what we're going to do? Was it a tough place to get to team-wise? Is it something that you've had to continue to remind people?
Well, you're dealing with people, and people have different personalities. But at the same time, driving that excitement, that sense of competition is critical. Now, you will find, obviously, some who are better than others, but at the end of the day, I think that we have managed to maintain this competitive mindset, and it's not necessarily competition external, it's sometimes even internal. Of course, you have to make sure that it is a positive competition rather than negative, in the sense that you drive using the example of the sales team. You use the sales by setting objectives, setting targets, obviously placing even incentives to try and motivate them to achieve certain performance parameters.
And if the numbers are down for a month, how do you you want to motivate them, but also guys, the numbers are important. How do you strike that balance by not...
Yes, what we normally do is when you have, like in anything else, when you have a particular period where there's a bit of a slump, the performance is not that great. I mean, one, you have a multifaceted market, which can mean that you can have a part of the market which is going through a difficult phase, but others are not. But you always take the opportunity, sometimes even when it's not a busy period. I mean, even internally, when there are times in the year where we're not as busy, it's the time of the year where you sit back, you plan, you revisit your intentions for the year. So driving and drumming up that excitement, keeping your staff motivated, can take various forms, but predominantly we usually like to take examples, success stories, even individual clients where we would have taken a particular initiative and seen a positive outcome.
So like starting a meeting in that way.
So you say, you're all going through this bit of a challenging moment. Look at your colleague. He's managed to deal with this problem in this manner. So you highlight rather than giving a bit of a cosmetic scenario. You give a tangible, real-life example where they can relate to. And that I find is obviously very energizing because it's not just someone giving you a sort of motivating speech. It's a bit of what I draw when I watch, let's take an example, a football match.
Okay.
Sometimes you're watching a football match and you're seeing a team that you support and first half they're losing miserably, they're playing lousy. And then second half you say, what on earth? This is not the same team. What on earth happened at halftime? The coach must have given some motivational talk, must have really driven up that enthusiasm.
Backed it up by
And
evidence.
that is critical, I find, because you could find a situation where halftime you're losing 3-0, the coach just vents his frustration on the team and continues to throw on added misery on the players, only to go out and ending up conceding more goals. Or else you can have a coach saying, yes, we're 3 down, but guys, you need to believe in yourself. There's still another half to go. Let's give it our best. Let's go out there and show them and you'll be amazed that few minutes of talk can really invigorate, and motivate the team. And so sometimes it just, it's almost unbelievable when you see a team. And I must say that going back some years, probably one of my most positive and inspirational experiences was when I heard, I believe he was the Italian national volleyball coach, of how he deals with the dressing room when you're losing a critical match. And it's amazing how you can relate that motivational and challenging moment with real life, not necessarily just business or sports, but even real life, where you have difficulties or you have challenges. Yet when you sit back and you really make that added effort, you will be amazed sometimes, surprising even yourself, when you can really rise to the occasion and pleasantly find out that you're capable of doing more than what you actually thought you would be able to do in the first place.
That's so true. I mean, I've been employed, I've had managers that have made me and managers that have made me feel like I'm just climbing a hill that is stacked against me. So your advice to somebody that is managing a team would be, use evidence to show them, listen, we've done it before. You've got the tools, we're setting you up for success. And let's, try our best. That would be kind of the...
Yes, I would say so. I mean, a team is made up of individuals, each having their own skills, their own capabilities. There again, whether it's in sport or in business or in real life. But at the end of the day, I think the strength and the ability of a coach is to get the collective strength, to get them all in sync. It's like, getting an orchestra to play all in tune. Otherwise, if you get 2 or 3 of them who are out of tune, it's going to distort. But collectively, you can make a great result. So it is about, yes, driving individual enthusiasm within the context of a collective effort.
And when it comes to driving enthusiasm once, I guess anyone can do it, or a lot of people can do it. It's month over month, years over years, decades. And this brings me to my next point. So when I was preparing for this interview, I spoke to a good friend of mine, Josh. Hey, Josh. And we always talk about kind of the longevity of things and making it sustainable, because nowadays it feels like everything is so fast. Like if I look at my phone, I've got messages, emails. If I look at my phone to message a friend, I'm seeing all the things of work coming in. You can take your laptop and start working at any time of the day. It's very hard to switch off. It's kind of makes you think, can I keep up this cadence for the next 10 years, 20 years? So let's take me, I'm 31. I've got another 40, maybe 50 years of work in me. So, and obviously you're on the other side of it, where you've kept up that pressure of work, you know, motivating teams, yourself, and also on the backhand of that, an intense sport, which, yes, has helped you and given you that edge, but it's still intense in its own way. So my question to you is, what would you think, in your own words, is your kind of secret to that longevity code of keeping that intensity at work and also your fitness and mental health for a sustained period of time?
Well, I guess it boils down to character, but you have to have that determination. Yes, when you're talking of something that has to remain as, you know, it's like I refer to what's important in life is what gets you out of bed in the morning and not what keeps you awake at night. So that sense of motivation. So you've woken up in the morning and you're looking forward to a day, feeling energetic, fully focused on the day ahead, rather than on the negative side. And when you've been doing this for year on year, yes, there will be moments where one might say, but you know, you keep on. But I guess at the end of the day, once you are making steady progress, achieving the results that you want, although I must say that when you're talking of results, for me, when one is speaking of a winning mentality does not mean you have to win everything. For me, a winning mentality is never giving up. You keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Now, yes, you may say, but does everyone have that determination, that drive to keep going? Everyone will have his ups and downs, but I think at the end of the day, if you're surrounded by positiveness, if you're surrounded by, you know, the right environment, it keeps you going. It can really keep you going.
So for you would say it would be having clear goals?
Having goals is clearly critical, and especially you need to have your, what I would call the low-hanging fruit, so the relatively short-term goals, medium-term goals, and your long-term goals. It's not always easy to define them, but it's like everything else in life. You may have a clear destination, but you still have yet to define the journey. So you need to obviously set the direction. How you get there, it may not always work to plan. You may have to deviate a bit here and there, but ultimately, yes, it's setting the direction and sticking to that direction. There may be instances where you need to improvise, but ultimately adapting to the circumstances, the challenges, what you may have foreseen or maybe did not foresee. But as long as you have a clear sense of direction, you know what you really want, then I think it's clear. It's a matter of remaining consistent.
And I think having those, I'm really happy you mentioned the low-hanging fruit, because I feel I set those smaller goals, and each time my confidence goes up 0.1.
Yes.
And so then it doesn't seem as crazy, because I'm like, okay, I have, like you were going back to what you said about your sales team, I've got that evidence now where I tell myself, okay, when did it not work out? And multiple times, I can have a whole list. But even when it didn't work out, I say I don't think I would take that back, because then on the back of that, I boomeranged and I learned X, Y, Z. So it's really cool you mentioned that. And for kind of young professionals with big ambitions, they're, like every day waking up, let's go, goals. What would be your advice or something you wish you knew earlier, kind of going into this?
Well, advice in terms of, I think, if there's one thing I would say, drawing a bit of parallel working life and is when you're in your school days, looking at people who are studying business studies, you would obviously, one of your basics is on the importance of planning, okay? But then the minute you start working, you realize that it's no use having a plan if you don't work your plan. But then, as years pass by, you realize that it's even not enough to have a plan and work your plan if you don't believe in your plan. So I think, on hindsight, I think for those who are starting in life and have a plan, no matter how ambitious it is, it's obviously important to work the plan, but most important is to believe in the plan. If you believe in the plan, you're already halfway there.
I really love that. In fact, it kind of took me a minute to answer back, because the belief part is something you really believe in. In fact, when I was researching for this podcast and I wrote Numen Aquilina, the first thing that came up was, in fact, I wrote it down. It was believe and you will achieve.
That's
and then
correct.
I came to your office and you also have it there. That belief, was it always there? Because I know you keep on saying it's a character thing, which 100%, but is it a bit of, I would say, I'm saying this in the most optimistic way, a bit of delusion, where like nobody else believes it yet. But then you reach that goal and everyone goes like, obviously Norman managed, but at the beginning it was a bit like, this guy is crazy, or...
No, the belief is more or less setting an objective. And there will be moments in time where you start saying, am I thinking too big? Am I being overly ambitious? Is this within my reach? So, yes, it's setting those objectives, but then the belief is a very powerful word I feel very strongly about, but it all boils down to the mental strength, really. And this is drawing a bit of a parallel with sports, especially when you're of a certain age, where the physical effort is critical, but the mental strength is what tips the scale. So whether you achieve or you believe, it's all about starting with the brain. Because at the end of the day, if your mindset is that you want to train your body, if your mindset is you want to achieve a goal in your working environment or in your personal life, that is what's critical. So for me, it's a foundation. It's something that really can make or break a person. But I think, broadly speaking, people sometimes underestimate their internal strength. It's in moments of trial, when you're going through difficult moments, where you can sometimes rediscover that inner strength in you. I mean, and when you do that, you'll be amazed how much you can achieve. And maybe a bit of on a lighter note, when you talk about, how you achieve and believe, and setting your goals. It's like when you're running a marathon. The first few kilometers, after 5 kilometers, you don't say, I have 37 kilometers to go. You say, I've already run 5 kilometers. So you start thinking of the positive. I've done 5, I've done 10, I've done 15. So the goal is maybe still seen as a distance, but then once you pass the halfway line, it's a countdown. So you say, okay, 20 to go, 15 to go. So it's all a bit of a mental game, so to say, setting your objectives, breaking it down into achievable parts, and then you'll be amazed that at the end of the day, you say, yes, I've made it. I've actually made it It's like myself when I had my first experience of a full marathon. I mean, a full marathon seemed like something which was
unachievable,
mission impossible. Today, when I think of, okay, I've done London, I've done New York, I've done so many, Vienna, Berlin. I've done
cool.
so many, but really and truly, to be quite honest, the ones that give me most satisfaction are the ones which are more in the countryside, more open air, more near nature, where I find them so more motivating and inspiring.
Yeah. And in fact, you've often said that a trained body can take you far, but a trained mind takes you even further. And I think that's something you really try to live by, right?
Yes, I think this is critical. As I said, earlier on, I mean, I do come across instances where your body is sort of telling you, hey, go slow. But yes, mindset is really what can make a big difference, whatever your objectives are in life.
Yes. And when it comes to, busy people, they're professionals, they're crazy hours, kids, family, life, it gets all a bit too much. How has sports kind of helped you with that work-life balance, or do you even think about work-life balance, or is it all kind of the same for you?
No, for me, I would say that sport is an integral part of my lifestyle. And for me, as I had mentioned, work-life balance, for me, sport is a key component over there. It's a critical part in terms of my work-life balance. But I find that it's become more than anything else a lifestyle, a lifestyle of choice. Some people refer to even when you are so committed to living an active life, it's as though you have to be super disciplined, almost military discipline. And whenever people question, but you certainly must be super disciplined and all this, I tend to correct by saying, yes, you need to be disciplined, but at the end of the day, discipline almost gives the impression that you're doing it because you're forced to do it. For me, this is why I refer to my lifestyle as a lifestyle of choice, because it's something that's part of my lifestyle. It balances out.
What you get to do.
And I have to say that it also has a positive bearing on my day, even at work. I mean, this morning I would have started off with an early run. It was raining, but it was okay. We still go out. We still enjoy the run. By the time you're about to start your day, you're fully energized. You take on the day as though you want to conquer, the world. And although I've been doing this for 20 years now, and 15 years as CEO, I still go into work with all that enthusiasm, all that willingness to be able to make sure that each day counts. At the end of the day, I sit back and say, okay, we've managed to achieve this. We've managed to make progress here. That's all part of the mindset to make sure you're constantly moving forward, achieving whatever you want to achieve, and having the satisfaction of saying, yes, it was yet another productive day. A friend of mine used to tell me every morning he used to go out saying, another day, another dollar. He used to have this mindset of, but in reality, yes, you go out there to try and really, with that enthusiasm, and I think that is critical, because I can see this in many people, but you also find people who maybe don't have the drive, but it really makes a big difference on your personal well-being, on feeling, motivated and satisfied with how you've, performed and what you've achieved in whatever you're seeking to deliver.
And on days when you kind of wake up and the world feels like it's on top of you, do you miss training, or you've missed your alarm, you're stressed at work, something came up that, you have to stop training, you can't go training because you need to be at the office yesterday?
Now, that is something that I've really instilled in myself. There's no such thing as cancelling my training. I reschedule my training, but I don't cancel it. I mean, obviously, my job requires long hours. And it's not necessarily just office hours, even beyond that. And I obviously have to make myself available because it's part of my responsibility and commitment towards my role. So what I do is whenever I don't have the time to do what I plan to do, I say, fine, I can't do it at that time. I'll do it later. I'll do it earlier. I'll change. Or if it's super bad weather, I'll say, okay, we can't go for a run or we can't go for a cycle, but we can go to a gym or we can do something else. So I adapt. I don't sort of just take things at face value.
There's always a workaround.
If there's an obstacle, you find a way how to make plan B. And this is the mindset.
And you're still competing. I know that you said that you don't plan like a year in advance, like I'm going to go do this marathon or whatever. But if there is one coming up in a few months, it's a perfect hybrid between going abroad, taking a bit of that, like maybe mental distance from things, obviously enjoying life, and you get to do your sport in the meantime. As you get older, as we all are, and you do these challenges, and there are younger, maybe fitter athletes, how do you view that now, kind of in your 20th year, as going into this sport and keeping up that competitive edge?
No, I mean, for me, it's like I said, it's a lifestyle. Although I've been doing this for so many years, each race is a different story, and yes, I do take the opportunity of picking a couple of races, a handful of races each year, to go abroad and disconnect from the local life, to be able to re-energize myself. So it's not just about competing, it's about re-energizing, coming back with possibly new ideas, fresh thoughts. And I think that it's worked well, and I look forward to hopefully many, many more. Even this year, yes, I haven't actually booked any particular event, but hopefully within the next 2 months I plan on doing something. But typically I would do a handful each year, and that for me is something I wouldn't miss for the world.
Okay. And when you see younger people at events like this, how does that feel?
Yes, sometimes. As you know, I've also done some triathlons, and triathlons are probably the ones that sometimes when you see some of the athletes, at least at the starting line, it may feel a bit intimidating, seeing athletes who are twice your size, half your age, and you say, what on earth am I doing here? But at the same time, I find it also motivating. I mean, a bit on a lighter note, but once I'm on the starting line, I forget the age gap. I forget that I'm competing against people who are much stronger, much faster than I am. For me, it's just about getting the race done. And I do recall in one particular race, I actually won my age category.
Fantastic.
But for me, it doesn't feel like a victory, because I say, listen, on the starting line, we're all equal. So the fact that I may have placed first in my age group, but whatever I ranked out of the total, for me, doesn't make me feel like a winner. So it's always with a bit of that mindset. And maybe this point I would say, which is a bit of a character trait of mine, which is no matter what I achieve, at the end of it, I always ask myself, but couldn't I have done better? Couldn't I have maybe made that extra effort? It's constant. And sometimes I keep on questioning myself, saying, but, when does one say, yeah, that was the best I could do? So whether it's a decision in work, whether it's a race and I clocked a particular time, or anything else, I always instinctively ask after, saying, but was that the right outcome? Could it have been better? Could I have done? There's always that sense of reflection on how to improve, not only what has yet to come, but what has actually already. So if I had to be a bit of self-critical sometimes, and maybe a bit of advice even to people out there, is it's good to be reflective, but sometimes when you overthink too much, it can be a bit taxing on you. So
Does it take away a bit from the happiness and success you've just achieved?
Yeah, I would say yes, because it's the same like in work when you've us being a public listed company, we obviously publish our accounts. And whilst if our accounts are strong, one would say, okay, it's time to sort of, celebrate the results. But my mindset is already on the new year, saying, we started another race. I don't have time to
I love how
celebrate
you
the
call
past.
it another race.
So it's yet another race. So, keep on. So this is it. It's a constant cycle. Keeps you going, keeps you re-energized. So, yes, so I am in competition with myself, with the market, with everything around me. But that's part of a character trait that you're always trying to see how you can sort of keep that momentum going, if not even improve on it.
That's something I'm really learning, because I'm very much the type of person that when something good happens, I get a bit lost in that energy, which is good, because you have to give yourself a moment to be like, okay, I achieved it, or we did it. But it's also a really good time to say, okay, we did it. Let's write down what worked well, what could have done better, because we can't only do that when things are going wrong, but also when things are going right. So I really hope anyone who's listening to this doesn't take it as anything negative, but the opposite, that when things are going well, let's keep track of why, what brought us here, and maybe, because also we can always improve. So that's really cool. So fantastic conversation. I don't think it could have gone any better. There are some closing questions that I like to ask. So if somebody has never ran before, maybe they've done stuff at school, maybe once or twice, they've run a 5K and after were like, oh my God, I feel like I'm about to die. What would be your advice for someone to get started in running? Because I feel like it's very accessible. Like you said, it's fantastic if you love to travel. You can book a race abroad. You meet new people who also share the same sport. But that seems very far away right now. What would be kind of the starting point that you would advise?
When I face those sort of situations, I mean, invariably when I meet up, socialize, people tend to pick up conversations on running and this and that. And invariably, when you find people who have never ran, they always tell you either because my knees hurt, because I've never really ran, I've never done sports. But there is this misconception that running is just a physical experience. And the minute people start, and everyone can start in his own way, you can even start from a walk, a jog, and it picks up. You find that it's even uplifting in terms of your mood. And more often than not, and it gives me particular satisfaction when I would have seen people who have done absolutely no sports in their life. I meet them a couple of months after and they tell me, I've started to do a bit of running, a bit of walking, a bit of this. And so my advice is try it, because it is so satisfying, not only from a physical side, but also from a mental side. It's a lifestyle changer for the better. It makes one take a more positive outlook to life. And I think if people, and let's face it, we in Malta tend to be a relatively lazy nation. Wherever we go, we love our cars. We want to drive to the doorstep of where we want to. So a bit of exercise, a bit of, is good. And I think if people realize the benefits, both the physical and the mental side, I'm sure that they will take it up and stick to it. Maybe not to the extent that I do, but definitely it is something that will have a positive experience on their life.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. And what would you say has been your favorite destination to run in?
For me, undoubtedly, although I've done triathlons and various swims and races, I think the ones I enjoyed most are what I call the mountain marathons. They are mountain trail runs, so obviously the challenge is the elevation. But that sense of fresh air, openness, and these are obviously happen around in July, so it's a great time. of the year where I just love it. So I think that those were probably the races I look forward most. I mean, typically I would go on the Alps or the Dolomites and hope to do so again this July. But definitely it's an experience, and once you finish the race, you feel so energized. So it's just an experience that I can't, I won't miss it for the world.
Amazing. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking, and I'm definitely going to have a lot of lessons taken from this. I think probably the finish line mentality is something that, since we spoke about last time, I kept on thinking about it. In fact, this morning also I was saying I came here like a few minutes late because I was like, no, I need to go training. I'm going to reschedule and not cancel it. And because at the moment my finish line is to get fitter, to be stronger. So thank you for that lesson, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
It was a pleasure. And maybe just on a last note, I think on the issue of fear of the unknown.
Yes.
I think if there's one thing I would say is that even if I had to look back at, I always had this fear in terms of swimming open seas, the currents and all this. But you realize that even people that might be fearful of certain things, once you actually put your head together, you find that you can overcome that fear. So whatever you set out in life, whatever objectives you may have, despite the fears you may have, sometimes you need to just pluck that courage, do it, go for it, and at the end of the day you find, after all, it wasn't that bad, it wasn't that fearful, and I actually managed to do so. So the sense of achievement is even greater, especially when you would have achieved something that you thought from start that it was out of your comfort zone, totally fearful areas that you wouldn't want to touch. So my last message would be that don't underestimate your inner strength. You can achieve so much more in life.
Yeah. And so you're doing open water swimming fearlessly now?
I wouldn't say fearlessly, but I at least do it, and I do it and I enjoy it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.